All right, hello folks. Welcome to another pairing stream.
Woohoo! Yay!
So today we're gonna try again to get some authorization authentication working. This time we'll use a hopefully more appropriate tool than last time.
Is there stuff we need to rip out? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we're gonna pretty much rip out. We might even just do a revert back to some earlier version.
Hmm.
One thing that I just find interesting about the market for authentication authorization stuff is most of it is aimed at like front end, like single page applications or back ends that are not Java. And it's one of those things that's like it makes me feel like I'm no longer with it. Like I'm using some outdated, obsolete technology. Because if Java is mentioned, it's sort of like an afterthought in a lot of these. And then there's some where it's not even Java's not even mentioned at all, and it's just like not like Java's dying. It's just, and I've used other tools, but like the ones that seem to be aimed at like we don't want to run our authorization server. Like actually, Spring Boot has an OAuth resource server that you could run, and you could run Keycloak, which is basically an authorization thing. But like, just like I don't want to set up AWS, I don't want to run an authorization server and so on. So yeah, it's a little bit. I don't know if frustrating is the right word. It's more
Disheartening.
maybe a little bit, yeah. Or and also the sense of sort of like feeling left out. Uh, so, but Kinda looks reasonable. Oh, hey, Astrid. Yes, sorry, we're stepping on the Agile Lunch and Learn. Which reminds me, by the way, uh, and I keep forgetting to promote this because I don't know about you, but like when I look at my calendar, I'm mainly looking at the week. And then so when stuff happens next week, I'm like, oh right, there's stuff happening next week. And so next week, actually around during this time, I'm doing a thing on my TDD game with the Agile Lunch and Learn. So
Oh,
I'll post a link to that later, um, and I'll post that. I gotta remind myself to post that in my Discord as well. So that should be fun. So that that'll happen next week. But anyway, so let's get to it. Let's go see where we are with your code.
I will now move StreamYard off screen. So I'm
Right.
ready when you are. So I wonder if we have even some uncommitted
Yeah, we
changes.
definitely have uncommitted stuff.
But then before that, it's interesting. What was there anything
Yeah, so
else?
why don't you do a diff on the POM file? So if you click on POM and then just show diff.
Show diff or new tab?
Show diff. Put the new tab anyway. I don't know about you, but I like it to pop up as a window whenever I do side by side or top bottom, because it pops it in an editor tab. I find it annoying. You can actually have it pop up as a new window on top if you go into settings, and then go into advanced settings at the bottom, and then type diff in the search there, and then uncheck that.
And you know what I'm going to do?
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's like before I started doing the side by side or the top bottom editor tab setup, having it pop in the editor tab was really nice. But now, because it pops it in an editor tab that takes up half the space, it's actually really annoying. So I'm glad they had that as a setting. So let's see. We were figuring out some Postgres stuff. I think that was the only change. No,
Was this added?
the orange is no. So only stuff that's blue is changed. If you look in the rightmost gutter on the right side. So that's the only thing that's changed. Is basically we commented out Postgres, which we can leave commented out, so that's fine. That's just when we were trying to troubleshoot Supabase. Our application YAML, we can definitely delete that file. You could have done the delete from there too.
You can?
Yep. Let's right-click
Just
delete.
Oh, there it is. Or press the delete button.
That works too. Application properties. Yeah, it's not showing all the diffs, so we'll just set that back. So let's delete everything from line 3 to the end on the right there in the application properties. And let's go back into the POM file. So we'll just go into the editor for the POM file. So not the diff.
Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, you could do it in a diff, but this.
I was wondering if if DoubleClick would do a diff or whether it would open the file.
You could. I assume DoubleClick did the diff, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what you'd kind of want. So.
Yeah. I was just testing it. That's why I did that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we want to find the library we added for Supabase HTMX. So just you can search for it. You can just scroll down. There it is. Yep. Let's get rid of. Sorry, Thomas. Not your fault. We're on 3.2.2, right? Of Java. Spring Boot. Just go to the top of the file. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Let's run all of our tests. See where we are. And we could look also at the commit history, but I don't think we changed anything important. We may have added some endpoints, but we can take a look at that. All right, so all the tests are passing. Let's just open up the Git history. We want the tool window. Alt 9.
Oh, down here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so essentially we haven't really done anything since we haven't committed anything. So
right.
So we're good. Okay.
And it all passed.
Yep.
Sweet.
All right. Well, let's do a commit. Just to basically, say we restore back to not using Supabase. Yeah. Can you bring up the Git tool window again? Because I think we were looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, we don't want to look at the remote. We want to look at that. Because you had a bunch of unpushed changes. No? You're not scrolled all the way to the top of that list. Yeah, so if you click on starting down auth path, click on that one. So we did make some changes. We did some renames. That's fine. That was just a rename. And we had changed the POM file to add the thing, so that's fine. Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So the first thing we'll want to do is sign up for Kinda.
Huh. Okay. Let me actually make sure my Vault, yep, is turned off on the other computer. Let me bring it up here. Actually, we should hide my window for a sec.
Yep.
Really? There we go. Let me see if I already have Kinda. Nope, just Kindle.
Not the same.
No. So let me bring Kinda into view, and you can. Well, actually, I should just do the startup for free, right?
Yes, it is unlikely we will ever hit more than 10,500 monthly active users. So it's interesting. They have a contest for um, doing a speed run for setting up authentication, which I think is kind of an interesting little contest.
Interesting that they do the please give us your first name and give us your last name thing.
Yeah. Folks, don't do that. Don't ask for first and last name separately, unless you are the government, in which case you know what you're doing, usually, in terms of filling out forms. Although it was funny, what was it? There's something governmental, and you click on to sign up, and you basically get a Google form, which I thought was like, what? Really?
Yikes.
That kind of, yeah, that's kind of yikes. But it was official U.S. government stuff, so. Uh,
Oh,
but yeah, don't ask for first name and last name. If you're going to ask for first name and last name, then you are required to ask for other names as well. And you don't want to do that, so don't do that. Just ask for full name.
forgot to mute. It's asking for Kinda domain. And if I type, it has actually, you can actually share the screen for a second. There's
Okay.
nothing.
Oops. There we go.
So it's showing business name. So if I put in my business name, it's going to start. Oh, it did before. Interesting. It was starting to mirror. Let me just go. It was typing whatever I typed here in before in that place.
Right, that makes sense because it's basically guessing that that's probably what you want as your subdomain.
Ah, okay. I thought it was going to force me down that path. So we'll do song themes, right?
Um, yeah, that's fine.
Or
You're probably not
well,
going to
what were
use
you
it.
thinking?
Well, generally, this domain would be for all of your authentication needs,
Mm,
because this domain would be specific for your business, for your entity that might have multiple applications. Um,
right.
but you can leave
Mm.
it as song themes. You can.
Or should I not
I'm I'm pretty
use this
sure. Really
and
think it doesn't matter.
just call it,
You could just call it song themes.
Rizzi open source or something?
You could just call it song themes.
Okay, cool.
This is, and I know I rant a lot about this kind of stuff, but it's like there's a really good group that does user UI and user research, and one of the things they found, especially for long forms, this isn't a terribly long form, but one of the things they point out is it's really important to tell people, why are you asking me for this information, right? Like, why are you asking me for business name? What are you going to use that for? What does it actually mean? And Kindle domain 2, what does that mean? What are you gonna use that for? How does that affect my application? And I find that a lot of this kind of stuff gets short shrift, and what I think companies, especially startups like this, don't realize is, they always talk about, this idea of a funnel, and people, jump off the funnel and don't end up trying things out for exactly this reason. It's like, I don't know what you're gonna use this for. Am I locking myself into this? Can I change it later?
Right.
All these questions that you were asking that I'm also asking. It's like, don't just assume we're just gonna throw you and give you information without understanding what it's used for. And it's not
Right.
necessarily even always like a privacy issue. It's more like, if I give this to you, can I ever change it? Will this affect me for my entire life, right? And these are things that cause people to move to something else. And I think these kinds of things don't take a lot of effort, other than having to consider it. And it's unfortunate that not very many, like, there is a couple of places that do exactly that. It's like, here's what we're gonna use it for, and there's a little question mark that you can mouse over, and it'll tell you a little bit more about it, or there's a link to some help. Um, so I think, these are important things, and if you're designing applications that ask for information, you wanna be really clear about why you're asking for that information.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure what's next, so maybe we should, or I'll just take me off the screen
Y Yeah, let me
since we
switch
don't
back.
know.
Yeah. And this is kind of the funny thing is, like, what sensitive now information are you gonna show and or ask for
Right.
at this point?
Didn't like the hyphen, the kebab case in the.
See, like,
Why didn't it tell us that
why didn't it tell
before?
you that? Why didn't it have a little regex in the input field? Like, folks, this stuff isn't hard, but you are hurting your business by doing this stuff. Especially if, like, this is not hard stuff. This is just not hard. You're just not thinking. You're not having empathy for your potential customer.
It says start a project from scratch or use Kinda with an existing code base. I imagine existing code base
I guess so.
because it doesn't say whose code base. Existing Kinda code base, or, you know what I mean? Again, it's a
Yeah.
similar. Okay, I'll do with existing. Let's see what happens. Tell us about your tech. Oh my. I guess I just click on Java.
Should I show?
Yeah, you can show.
Okay. Whoops, wrong one. There we go. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't matter because
Yeah.
so you can just
Oh, this is them telling you what the SDK is for. It's a
yeah, so it's basically asking you so it can guide you to the specific docs part.
right.
But unfortunately, their guide is for Java is not great.
Hmm.
Um, Mainly because I kind of like, again, this is where it's like, clearly they don't understand the Java market, because you would not provide a Java SDK without considering frameworks like Spring.
Oh, interesting.
Like, why would you do that? In 2024, why would you provide support for Java without explicitly saying, "Here's how to use it with Spring"? That to me is just like, you don't understand the market. Which again, we are the odd man out, in this industry for some reason. All right, let's go next.
Let's hope nothing.
So here it's basically asking, how do you want users to sign in? Uh, you can use email and let them authenticate, or you can use social media authentication. Um, I
I
would just
lean toward email,
I would
but
just leave email. I don't think we need the other ones.
okay. So now the sign in part, I think Is that just showing what it looks like?
Um,
Ah,
no,
it's not asking me to sign in. It's saying this is what it'd look like
yeah. So the
if you chose that.
subheading says choose how users authenticate. You can change this later. So that's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's saying here's what this is for. Um, I think that could be a little bit more clear. So Dan Torres says on LinkedIn, any advice on how to onboard as a mobile developer to product people to resolve this? I don't understand what do you mean by onboard. Um, I
Maybe
can
they
answer the
mean,
second sentence, which is
yeah.
normally they will say these things are nice to have, but we don't have the time to do it. And I'm telling you that they're not nice to haves. You lost me as a customer because you didn't give me a good onboarding experience. And I see this talked about in talking about how do we get people, because they measure this stuff, right? They're measuring, did you get to this point in the entire stream? Um, I understand what onboard means. I don't understand what onboard as a mobile developer to product people. So that sentence doesn't parse for me. So maybe Dan, you could rewrite it. Uh, they measure, or they should be measuring this funnel of like, well, they started it, but they didn't finish it. Where did they drop off? And your goal as designing that part of your product is you want to make sure people aren't dropping off. Because if people drop off, then you've lost a potential customer. And so basically the way I convince people to pay attention to that is this is money. This is literally you selling the product. And if you don't sell it and don't make it easy to buy, then what else do you care about? Like, especially as a startup, like that's the major thing is you want to prevent churn and you want to get new customers. And so you don't want to mess up both of those, but certainly getting people to come onto your application, um, that's their first impression. And you are not unique. There are lots of choices, and so we want to make sure that people stick with it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's money. Period. Easy. I mean, ironically, it's the easiest thing you can sell. You can say, "Look, we have data that people are dropping off here, and I can tell you why." Because people are nervous and anxious and are unsure, and anything like that is going to leave people with a bad taste in their mouth. There are going to be lots of people who just like put in stuff and don't care. But why cut off people who might give you money? All right,
Next.
let's next.
Maybe I'll stop sharing. Is it easier for me to do it or for you to take me off just in case something?
Oh, it's easy for me to do it.
Okay. Just in case something
Yeah,
functions.
great question, Dan. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, you can come back.
All right.
Connect your Java code base. Use our Java starter kit.
Well, we don't want to use their starter kit because it's not Spring Boot, or it doesn't appear to be Spring Boot compatible from the little research I did. So let's click on connect and see what happens. So yeah, let's scroll down through this. So telling us to add the Java SDK. Update environment variables. So that's really nice that they hid the secret until you hit the copy button. That's smart. Um, and this is one of those things, like if you were sitting alone, or even in your group ensemble, it wouldn't matter because nobody there cares about exposing that information. But I like that they kept that hidden until copied. Hey, Dudeman. So let's see. So tells us what the host, what the redirect is, and what the logout redirect URL. That makes sense. The client ID, that's public, so that's going to be sent along. So this is interesting. And again, this is making it, it's sort of again clear that they don't understand Java users because they have an at post construct, which leads me to believe that they're using either Jakarta or Spring Boot, but then they have a component scan, and I don't know if that's a Spring Boot component scan. It looks like it, but then but this is saying nothing about Spring Boot. So there's just not enough information here about. You're telling me post construct and you're telling me component scan. These are not Java things. These are some either Jakarta EE or some other kind of thing. And this is just, you're not telling us how to use this thing properly. So let's skip past this because I think that we want to go and look at some of the details and some of the authentication stuff. Because I think since they support standard OIDC, which is OpenID stuff, we can just use the standard out-of-the-box Spring Boot OAuth support. So let's click over on details on the left side. Okay, so these are some of the keys, and they are hiding the client secret, which is great. The callback URL, that's automatically set up. Logout, so all that stuff is set up, so that's good. I find that amusing that they ask for user first and last name. We've already ranted on that.
Uncheck that one. Does that mean it doesn't collect names at all?
Let's see. Yeah, so if they're signing up with email, then yes, that we wouldn't ask them for their name with that unchecked. I mean, it doesn't mean that our app can do it, but it means they won't. It means Kinda won't do it.
Right.
Which makes sense because right now it's set to use Kinda's own sign up screens, that toggle above it. I don't know what's with these modern kids today. Like, whatever happened to checkboxes? It's all these toggles that are all fancy, and I'm like, what's wrong with checkboxes? I'll tell you what's wrong with checkboxes. People are misusing them. But anyway, that's a separate rant. So let's see. I think all this stuff was sort of preset when we went through the initial wizard. So if you click authentication, yeah, I don't know why. I guess we didn't enter the Java app.
Do you want me to go back and do it?
Yeah, let's make it song themes. Yeah.
And then hit save down below.
Yeah.
I'm
glad they have a save button. I know, like, there's some UIs where everything gets auto saved, and it's like I'm never sure if anything actually saved. So an old-fashioned save button, I think, is more comforting to me. So do we want email password or do we want passwordless?
Looks like you can do both. Interesting. What implies it. Let's see what happens when you click this one. No. So
this is terrible UI. This is terrible. This is terrible. This implies that you could have both, and you cannot. This is really, why is this toggle thing here? I know I
wasn't trying to trigger you.
No, I know. I'm just like, what the heck is this toggle doing there? It's terrible. But anyway, I know my preference is I actually really hate passwordless, mainly because when I'm on like a mobile device, it's actually it works only half the time. because I have to switch over to my email app and I click it and then it sends me to somewhere else and it doesn't actually log me in and or lead me where I kind of wanted to go. So
Cool.
um,
Save.
yeah.
I was leaning toward password myself. So tokens.
Um, I don't think there's anything tokens that we need to look at. So these
And yes,
are
yes, Jeff. Radio buttons.
yes. Or I mean, I'm fine with like the big boxes, but making it clear that like you click on it, and it's really not clear that you click on it. But yeah, like these are the things that people get frustrated with. And the last thing you want, like, is if you're trying to sell a product, is to frustrate people who haven't paid you anything yet. Because then they're gonna be like, well, what happens if I actually start paying you? Are you gonna frustrate me more? Um,
Tokens.
I think that's it
Okay.
from here. Um, what I found interesting when I was looking through the docs the other day was the place that I found where Kinda is OAuth 2 compatible was under migrating from Auth 0. And I actually couldn't find it anywhere else. Anywhere else. I thought that was kind of surprising. Because one of the things that um, OIDC gives you is an easy way to sort of configure all of the stuff that we have to configure with basically OpenID. So OpenID is a standard that's kind of incorporates OAuth 2 to provide basically just the authentication part. So a lot of times people use OAuth just for authentication and not to supply any authorization information. So, for example, when I use GitHub, all I know is I know, you're you, and that's all I care about, the authentication. I'm gonna manage what you now have access to myself. And so that means you're just using GitHub or that other service for authentication. Um, Kinda, though, of course, supplies both authentication and being able to manage users inside of its app, and give it permissions there. And then you just get those in on the app side. Excuse me. Um, so what we actually want is we want to figure out with Spring Security what are the things that we can do to configure that. Excuse me a second. So
Do you want to share your screen? Are you looking at stuff that
yeah, I'm going to share my
you should
screen.
share?
So Spring Boot, more specifically, the Spring Security part of the Spring framework, has a way to configure basically OAuth 2 login. And so OAuth 2 login means it's going to handle this multi-step round trip to the server to basically authenticate you. Um, and so so this thing called OIDC is basically OpenID Connect. And so what OpenID Connect does is make it even sort of easier to set up. I think what we want, um, let's look at core configuration. So there's a number of OAuth resource servers that are built into or sort of pre-configured as part of Spring Boot, or sorry, Spring Security. Google, GitHub, Facebook, X, aka Twitter, and maybe one or two others. um,
I've heard it called X Twitter, which I thought was a nice way of.
yeah, and so what that means is if it's a common, what they call a common provider, you pretty much need to just provide two pieces of information. Everything else will just work. If it's not a common provider, which is the case for Kinda, so they use the example of Okta here. You provide the name of the provider, and then you provide the provider details. So this is so for the common ones, it already pre-configures this stuff. For us, we'll have to fill this in.
Isn't that
Uh,
also in that list that we saw on the Kinda website? Those properties, I think.
Most of them, not all of them. It had the client ID and secret, and I believe it had a couple of others, but they weren't exactly of the type expected by Spring Security.
Got it.
Let's see. Yeah, so it has host, but that's not enough. Redirect URL is okay. The post is logout redirect URL is sort of irrelevant. So we need these two, client ID and client secret. So we'll get those. What we need to provide is where do we go for authorization? Where do we go to get the token? So because there's this multi-step round trip for OAuth, basically we redirect you to them, you sign in as the user. That then calls back to us with a successful thing, and then we call and say, okay, now give us I have basically give us details about you, and there's other stuff that happens in profiles and all sorts of stuff. So there was, where was it? So weirdly enough, like this should have come up in my search for OIDC. So this is the OpenID configuration. If we actually hit this, and I'll hit this offline, we can basically get a bunch of information, which might be all we need. Because I believe I haven't used the OIDC stuff. Where is it? That's more details. Well, this and so where do we set that is what I'm looking for. I have to say that Spring Security docs are less than, like, it's one of those where you have to know a lot before you can figure out what to find. So what I'm looking for is this well-known OpenID configuration can help us get stuff configured, but I don't know where we do that in Spring Security. So we'll have to
Search well known, maybe? Or it could well hyphen known?
yeah, can do that. What was it? Let's see. So where was it? So it looks like we can use that to get a client registration. But what I was hoping is we wouldn't have to do that at all. And sort of this is the problem with sort of reference guides is like, here's what this thing is, but I'm not going to tell you in context how you might use this for login, because what we want is we want to delegate all the login stuff. Yeah, that just gets us to the OpenID docs. So an OAuth 2 client is useful if we're going to do authorization, because then we can basically take that and make a request to the resource server to say, for this user, what authorization do they have? But I don't want to do that. I just want to use it as login. So I think what we'll have to do is use this mechanism. Which I feel like we shouldn't have to do, but I don't want to spend a lot of time right now on stream figuring this out. So let's do this. Let's see if we can basically get these properties. So I'm going to switch over to your screen because you're going to be the one creating this.
Give me a second. And yes.
So I'm going to give you this link.
Using private chat, Discord,
Yep.
private chat. I just saw it.
And let me switch to your screen. You've got the dark mode thing going on. If you want the light mode, you can click it in the upper right.
Is it a Spring thing?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
a Spring
see.
Docs thing. Yeah.
And it's another slider.
I don't mind sliders for that. I do mind the way Kinda does it.
The sun looks like a setting gear.
Yeah, it does. It's not as sunny as it. The other problem with that is like it shows you what it currently is, but it doesn't tell you what it might be if you click it.
Mm.
So it's a little bit one
There's
of
no
those.
hover.
You have to sort of try it to see what happens. All right, so let's. Why don't you grab that YAML file and we'll create a. We'll basically copy that into our YAML. Yes, it does show a moon and dark mode. Oh, and hi, Tukes.
Make a new YAML file here.
Yes.
just plain file. They don't have your
Yeah, just plain file. Application.yaml. I love how
Why does it look like I didn't spell that right? Application.
Looks right to me.
Okay. You know, sometimes that happens. You're like, look at
Yeah.
what?
Okay.
Okay.
So let's replace on line 6. Let's replace Okta, however they pronounce it, with are you waiting for something?
Yeah, you said replace it with and you
Kinda.
didn't finish. Oh, I didn't hear you say Kinda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought you were looking something up.
Yeah, and change line 10 to match that. So what this is basically saying is now it will know that the name of the client registration, the configuration, and that the provider is all that. So grab the client ID. I did say it, but my microphone may not have picked it up. Let's grab from the Kinda side. Yeah, let's go into the details. So let's copy the client ID. And then let's paste that on line 7.
How do we deal with this secret?
Yes. So basically, on line 8, just put client secret, and you'll go into your local config and copy and paste that. So if you
Okay.
want to do that now, or do you want to do that off screen?
Local config. Now we set that up last week, but I don't remember if I took notes of where we put it. What's the file
So
name?
it was in it was the Spring Boot configuration. So it was in your .config directory off your home directory. .config spring-boot Spring Boot DevTools properties is the file.
No, I don't see it. Okay. You said it was off of home. Let me do that off screen. $ home. No, I didn't mean it that way. Oh, it's still doing it. Interesting.
So on Windows, it's not a $home. On Windows, it's %user_home%.
Oh, right.
This is why I don't like Windows anymore. I used to love Windows. But now, like, everything is already, I was always frustrated because all the docs seem to be centered around using Linux or Mac. And so now I'm on the other side of that and I'm like, yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, I didn't want that one. Actually, that'll work. And then under .config, under Spring Boot.
Yep.
Spring Boot DevTools properties.
Yes.
Okay. Open that. Let's hope which screen it goes on. Maybe drop me off for a second, just in case. Okay. There we go. They keep me off screen.
Yep.
So I can get rid of all the Supabase stuff.
Yep.
And I go back to Kinda, copy the client secret.
Right.
And what attribute do we assign it to?
So you're going to want it to be that attribute from the YAML file.
Right, the one just called client-secret? Or do I need the full?
You need the entire path.
Got it. So
So it might be easier if you did you have anything else? You shouldn't have had anything else in the properties file.
I deleted the Supabase stuff.
Yeah, and there's nothing else in there, right?
No.
Yeah. I would say just delete it or leave it empty. But what we want to do is we want a YAML version of that file because otherwise it's going to be painful to copy the property.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
So
make a new.
have an empty properties file, get out of that, and make a new file in the same directory where the Spring Boot DevTools property file is, and call it Spring Boot DevTools YAML.
Got it.
Because this very nested, deep thing is going to be easier to copy and paste using YAML.
Yes.
So Tukes, by the way, there's no need to repeat your question. I saw your question. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So no need to repeat your questions.
Okay. Got the YAML file created. What are you doing there? And just copy that entire path. But just for the client secret, not the client ID.
Yeah, you'll want to end up with basically one deeply
entry.
nested entry, yeah, for the client secret. And then you'll paste the client secret there.
Yep. Client secret. Grabbed, saved. We should be good. You can save, share screen again.
All right. Right. So now, because you have the DevTools config properties, when we run this locally, it will override the entry here with the one from your private stash, as it were.
Got it.
So now we need to fill out the Kinda authorization.
Can we say this?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But then,
so the authorization URI is going to be.
Should I go back to the?
Yeah, it might be in the Kinda settings. Let's go back to the quick start because it might have been in that initial section. No, scroll down. The environment variables. No, not quite. Well, I'm going to guess what it is based on the well-known configuration endpoint, which I just pinged for my app, and it's going to be the same. Just the subdomain is going to be different. So let's go back into your application YAML. So the authorization URI is going to be basically your subdomain, whatever that ended up being.
Yeah, I have to go grab my. It ended up being this. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then so it's /OAuth2, and then it's just /auth. So delete the rest of it and just keep the word auth.
Like that?
Yep, that looks right. The token endpoint, just delete the v1 there, and it's the same domain. User info. User info. I mean, these are all going to be the same domain, and there's not going to be a v1. It looks like it'd be wonderful if they abided by if this matched the standards that OpenID says. I'm guessing it is the user info endpoint. User info URI. Yeah, that's probably that. So instead of, oh, really? They have a v2? Okay, it's a v2. So it's OAuth 2 slash v2. Folks, don't version your APIs this way. Please don't do that. There's other ways to do it. And then instead of user info, it's user underscore profile. It's like, why would you do that? Why would you name your endpoint something other than the standard? Hey, Adaran, yes, we're setting up Kinda for auth, and it is far more tedious than it really should be. The username attribute sub is sufficient. Because that refers to the subject, I believe. And then the JWK set URI. JWK. Here it is. So it's instead of OAuth, it's so same domain. Then it's slash dot well dash known. And then it's JWKS.
And get rid of the OAuth v1 key.
Get rid of the rest of it, and then it's JWKS.
JWKS. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that's all we need. Yeah, I think that's all we need. So once we have that, now we should be able to completely delegate all of the authorization, all the authentication to Spring. So I have to remind myself how we do that. I want to log in. So core configuration. All that stuff is set up.
Do you want to share a screen with what you're looking at? Would that be helpful?
Here was no, because I need to direct you. Okay, so we now need to create a config file.
Same level as application YAML or somewhere else?
Same level as the startup class, the song theme startup. So it's in the root of the package because this is now actually Java code.
Okay. But of type file.
No, it's Java code.
Okay.
And so this is going to be OAuth 2 login security config.
Like that?
OAuth 2, the number 2 between the OAuth and the login.
Yeah.
The name doesn't matter. It doesn't care as long as we implement the right thing. But
yeah,
may as well
better to be
the right
clear.
name. Yep.
Agreed.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Somehow you marked it as an interface. No, we want this to be a class. It's a public class.
Interesting.
I think you hit annotate. You hit the annotation option when you were creating it.
Really? I want to undo it and do it again. I want to see what it was I hit.
All right.
Oh, really? Come on.
Yeah, you got to do one more.
One more. There we go.
So Adiron, we're not doing the Pixie grant flow because we don't need to hide stuff. We're doing back-end browser-based, just the OpenID flow.
I should have put in my
Oh,
copy buffer.
to login security config. How did you get the end of logging? It's login, not logging. Sorry if I wasn't clear.
No, that was just bad typing.
Yeah.
OAuth login.
And it's not a new file, by the way. It's because you're in the wrong place. So.
So from here?
No. Where the song theme starts. This is Java code, so it needs to be
right. Song theme. So it was there.
Yeah.
Okay. New Java class.
So OAuth 2 is a great once it works. Yes.
Oh, the arrow must have popped down to interface.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what happened now. Okay.
All right.
Sure. There we go. Much better.
And we need to throw a couple of annotations on top of this class. So it's both at configuration, because it's configuration. And then we want to enable web security. So once we do this, now all endpoints will be secure.
Are you sure? Or is it called web? Is it called enable web?
I wonder if
there's conditional on default web security.
Okay. Let me check something.
Okay.
So web security config. Yeah, enable web security. Why is that not popping up for you? So just type it out. Just at enable web security. With no S after web.
The other S.
Yeah. Oh, we might not have it in our POM file. That's why. Because we didn't actually include that dependency, because once you include it, then everything actually by default, if you do nothing, it becomes basic authentication. And so we don't want to do that. So let's go back to our POM file. It's probably in there, just comment it out. And look for security. Yeah. So we don't have it. So let's go add it then. So if you scroll up in the POM file to near the top of the dependencies, see where it says on line 19, edit starters. Click on that. Let's go find security. Open that up. And we want Spring Security and OAuth 2 client.
Yep. Sweet.
And it'll go download dependencies and integrate stuff and initialize it and index it. And okay, great. So now if we go back here, that should be available. Yep. There it is. Awesome.
Sweet.
All right. And so now, I think we can just use the standard config. So inside the class, we're going to create a bean. So at bean. And we're going to say the method is public. And what this does is it configures what's called a security filter chain.
Do I call it security filter chain?
Yes, that's the type. So it's a type, so it's class.
Security.
Yep, that one.
There it is. Yep.
We can just call it the method name filter chain. And then the parameter it takes is HTTP security. So upper H, lower the rest.
All right. That one.
Yep. And we'll just call it HTTP. And this throws an exception. So we'll say throws exception outside. Yep. And so inside this, we can just say HTTP dot, and there'll be authorize HTTP requests. So you can click that. And in there, we basically give it a lambda. So we'll call it, so type the word authorize, and then an arrow. And then we'll put this on a new line to make it easier to read. Authorization.any request. Sorry, authorize.any request.
Okay, cool.
Dot authenticated. That's it. And then outside of that, before the semicolon on a new line, here's where we'll tell it how to do login. And so we say .oauth2 login, all lowercase. No, you need to be outside one more paren.
Ah, Alt J. No, don't tell me. Control Shift J. It's close. So at this point, new
Yes.
line dot.
Yeah.
And,
And it's
and
OAuth2. And we want login. And just say with defaults. That one. And then on a new line after, so 17 and a half. Return http.build. Nope, you had it right, the variable.
there it is.
That's it. So what this does is it basically says, hey, for any HTTP requests, you're going to want to be authenticated. And the way we authenticate is with OAuth2, and you're just going to use the defaults for the OAuth2 login. There's a whole bunch of other things we could configure. But this should at least trigger, by hitting any page, it should trigger the automatic process for going through the OAuth in order to do the login.
So it'll pop us over to Kinda.
Right. So it should be, if we hit any page, static or otherwise, it will require authentication, and it will then kick off the process of redirecting us to Kinda. We log in there, and then it'll kick us back to our thing. Underneath the covers, it'll do some back and forth, and then we'll be authenticated. I expect this won't work because we haven't done anything to configure anything on the Kinda side.
Right.
But at least we should be able to detect that we've configured things on our end here correctly. I have no idea if it's pronounced Kindi or Kinde. So Adirad, and I didn't see anything on their site that said how to pronounce it, which is kind of funny. I always think, like, you should tell folks how to pronounce your company's name. So Adirad, it might be Kindi. I say Kinde because that's what it looks like to me. Probably a good time for us to take a break.
True. It has been over an hour.
And then when we come back, we can see what's broken. With this stuff,
Totally.
I have such low expectations, because this is so much harder than it needs to be. And again, this part is I like, this should be in the docs for Kinda. Like, here's your application YAML, here's your OAuth2 security login config, and that's it. And like, even providing a sample Spring Boot app would be nice. But they have their own thing, and I don't know what the heck that's all about. So, all right. So we'll take a break. 5-minute.
5s works for me.
Yep. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, I'll also address some of the questions that have piled up. So stay tuned for that. All right. So let me go back and answer some of the questions that have piled up. Uh, so Tukes asks, check the learning path of the official Spring Academy, and they ask prerequisites, serverless, and Tomcat servers. And they teach Spring Core before Spring Boot. I mean, you got to know, at least you don't have to know. I find it useful. I don't know about the Tomcat servers. That's an odd prerequisite. I don't understand. I don't think I understand much about Tomcat servers these days. But I think having an understanding of Java servlets at a very basic level, I think is important. I don't think you have to be an expert at it. Spring Boot and Spring Framework are interesting in that you learn the pieces of the Spring Framework, I think, easiest by learning Spring Boot. So I don't know about the details about that path. If you have a link to it, I can go look at it later. But this again is an excellent question to be asking on the Discord, because then it gives folks a chance to respond, and you can post links and things like that. So there's an entire channel dedicated to Spring Boot, Spring Framework. So if you want to follow up on that, I recommend that, because then it's not just me answering, but other folks who know. Thought there was another question. Oh, watch Alan Holub's talk about no estimates again. Have I watched it? I personally haven't watched it. Mike, I don't know if you've seen Alan Holub's no estimates presentation. If you've got a link for it, go ahead and share the link, and we can look at it offline. Again, great thing to post in for discussion in the Discord.
He does post a lot about no estimates on X Twitter.
Yes.
But I haven't looked at X Twitter in a while, so I imagine he still is.
Yeah, what I actually prefer is Woody Zool. I posted recently somewhere, one of the places, beyond estimates, which I think is a much better term. No estimates is intentionally provoking, I think, in not a great way, provoking conversation that leads people to say, "What? You mean no estimates? Really, no estimates?" And that's not quite what I think it derails the conversation. So I prefer the term beyond estimates. Like, yeah, there are kinds of estimates that we might have, that we might find useful, but it would be useful to go beyond that and discover what is actually the desire for having those, and basically go upstream or left, depending on what direction you think about, to discover why do we need those, and what kind do we need, and what are we using them for, and what do you know. So going beyond just saying, here's an estimate, we need an estimate, give me an estimate,
And
I think is important.
And it's telling that Woody, who actually originated the term no estimates, has shifted to beyond estimates.
Yeah.
And there's also that really good tool which does, oh my God, been too long. It uses basically random Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo, yeah. Troy
Which does
McGinnis talks a lot about that.
Yeah, has some really useful stuff in that regard.
Yeah.
And there's a great spreadsheet that can help you with figuring out ways without having to estimate each story, which is where it's painful.
Yeah.
And not clearly a value.
Yeah. And I've done lots of estimation of lots of stories, and I think you can do 30, 50 stories in less than an hour if you I was going to say, if you don't need precise estimates, but precise estimates are sort of a bit of an oxymoron, because they're just guesses. And all guesses are educated guesses. And do you need precision? Do you need, can we do this in this amount of time, or do we need to cut scope? that kind of thing.
And is the estimate, which is probably, like you said, better referred to as a guess, is is it a commitment as well?
Right, exactly. Yes.
That's
Are
where
we
it becomes
yeah, that's
problematic.
where it becomes really problematic. It's like, "Oh, you estimated 4 weeks? Okay, 3 weeks." Or it's like, "You estimated 6 weeks, we don't have 6 weeks." It's like, "Well, why don't you just tell us how much time you actually have, and then we'll figure out what we can fit in."
Right.
It's like, it's like, are we playing a guessing game? And I know people, in management doesn't do it intentionally, but it's like, you have something in mind. Can we start from there and then work our way backwards instead of us trying to guess what number you're thinking of, basically? Um, Aaron asked, "Have worked with other web frameworks that run on the JVM?" I have. I've worked with, gosh, 5 other frameworks. One of them, at least 2 of them were custom. Uh, um, One was, Drop Wizard, which I used before I got to Spring Boot. Drop Wizard was nice because it was just what you needed. It was sort of like a mini Spring Boot. It tied together a lot of the reference implementations. Still around, certainly not as popular. Um, I've used the Play framework. I don't know if I'd even call it a framework, but I've used Play. Um, Framework's a tricky term, right? It's like, if somebody else is doing the dependency injection, then yeah, it's a framework. Uh, I do want to play. There's one called Rife, RIFE, that I do want to play with. Um, but most of the people I work with are using Spring Boot, so that's what I do. Yes, that's always great. It's like, here, and then you do nothing with it, and it becomes a commitment. Yes, I've heard of Juby. Is it a framework? I mean, again, the line is a bit fuzzy, but it's like, do I have to conform to their stuff, or am I just invoking it like a library? Um, but either way, I've heard of it. I haven't really played with. There's also Vert.x, which I've played with a little bit. But uh, yeah, haven't looked closely at it. All right, should we see if stuff works or stuff fails in the right way, to be more accurate?
Sure. Here we go. I'm back on.
So we run the app and uh, see how it breaks.
Startup or application? App, right?
Well, we renamed it, so you might want to remove that from the
Oh,
configuration list. So if you click on the arrow or right arrow, just delete it.
I'm glad you remembered we renamed it. Oh,
Well, I
that
remembered
might be
because I said put the config file at the same level as the
the
startup
same
file.
level.
So,
Yeah.
so that's uh, all right. So what's not working?
Top, I presume.
Um,
Or do you want to go bottom up?
let's bring this into to scope. So let's see. Unsatisfied dependency. Oh, authorization grant type cannot be null. Okay. Authorization grant type. Hmm. I don't know what they mean by that. I mean, I know what they mean, but I don't know why they think it's missing.
Does that configuration class need to extend from something?
Well, the whole idea of the configuration is that we shouldn't have to create any class.
Mm.
Um, oh, I guess we need a couple more pieces of configuration. So, which was not clear from the docs.
Hmm.
I thought it would have used the default, but I guess not. So let's go. So lines 8.5. Whoops, no, back in there. Line 8.5. So we need authorization grant type. So authorization dash grant dash type. Yep, that one. I guess it's authorization underscore code. I think
Like
that's
that?
I think that's the standard. I'm guessing, but I think that's the standard.
And that's not shown on the, no, they're not showing it.
Because it's not a public client. So yeah, so that should be fine. Okay. And grant types, where is it? That's claim supported, scope supported. I'm actually going to have you run this on your end so we can see it. I don't think there's anything in here that's sensitive.
Okay.
So if you basically
New browser window?
no, we can do this inside IntelliJ.
Okay.
So if you open up the HTTP request, and you may need to search for actions because I don't know what menu it's under. Yep, click that.
That one?
Uh-huh.
Looks like it's
That's not
creating a new one.
that's not what I want. Actually, just go to the tools window, tool menu, and go to HTTP client, and then yes, that one. And it's going to be song themes dot. Basically, you might even have it in your clipboard somewhere, but it's songthemes.kinda.com. Or you can just Adoran gave you the full URL if you want to copy that. I was going to paste that.
Oh, I didn't see the.
Yeah, you can just grab the whole thing. Basically, the HTTPS song themes Kinda well-known OpenID config, and so basically what that'll return is a JSON blob of.
When you say grab you mean something in comments?
Yes.
Okay. I had that window out of sight. So you're saying this instead?
Yes. And that accept is correct. And so just click the little green arrow in the gutter. And we can see all the stuff that we want. So for scopes, I think we just want, I don't know, actually. Do we want email or OpenID? I don't know offhand what those scopes are. Let's ask for both. So if we go to our application YAML file, so you probably want to minimize this lower one a bit. And then under, so like 8.5, or sorry, 9.5, scope colon.
Oh.
And we'll put space email, comma, space open ID. Or we could just ask for, and let's ask for profile too. And then we need I don't know if we need the redirect URI. So we gave it the grant type. I'm just not sure if the grant type is customized or is a standard thing. Because if you scroll down in the bottom, you'll see a list of uh, authorization. So response type supported there. I don't know if that relates to authorization grant type or not. So I don't know if we should be saying code or authorization code.
For this, for line 9.
Yeah. So I don't know. And their documentation doesn't say anything about that, or at least it doesn't appear to. Well, let's try it and see what happens.
Okay.
Because I'm not seeing. Oh, it is under authorization code. Okay, so that is the standard. It's always hard to tell, like, what is specific to this provider and what is under the banner of the OIDC standard. And authorization underscore code is part of the standard. The scopes are not part of the standard. The username attribute is part of the standard. And it's like, so it's all this, like, some of it's standard and some of it's not, and some of it's and it's hard to know which is which without being an expert. Okay. Now what's failed? Did you run it again? Is that why it
I
failed
did.
again? Okay. No, you're too far.
Oh.
So sorry, if you're scrolling, I can't read. So stop scrolling.
Okay.
Thanks. What we want to see when we're troubleshooting is where does we start seeing the exception? So basically, from where we see exception there, right there, that's what we want to see, and we want to dig into that. Redirect URI. I suspected the redirect URI was empty. Okay. So we need to add that. So line, let's put it after the authorization grant type. So line 9.5, redirect dash URI.
Is it what we got in the? Is it this? Highlighted.
We want to do something like that. So I think I know what to type here.
Okay.
You want an open curly brace and then the word base, lowercase, and then an uppercase U, and then a lowercase RL. So base URL in that, and then after the close curly slash authorized, and then slash Kinda.
And
So
where did you get that information from?
I made it up completely out of thin air. No.
Ah,
So base URL is Spring will know what that is. It's basically whatever the URL of the running application. So when we run it locally, it will be localhost 8080. But
right,
the nice thing is when it's running in production, it will be whatever the URL, domain name, and so on is running in production. But it's just the base part of the URL, not any path stuff.
right.
Um, so this is basically the redirect back to our application, so it can uh, so the so Kinda can send stuff to us. So we basically send this path to them. That if they authenticate, then they basically send it back to us. My assumption is we use authorized Kinda because we've registered under the name Kinda there on line 6. Um,
Ah,
and my assumption is they have to match the documentation does not say.
hmm,
And this is a perennial problem I find with Spring security documentation is like, here's some stuff, but we're not going to sort of explain what is specific to this provider versus what is general that everybody uses and how these names tie together to these other names. So I find myself doing a lot of trial and error.
hmm.
Um, in this
So,
case, it does say registration ID, but it's not explicitly called out in the sample, but it is the registration ID, uh, which does come from line 6. So, um, so sometimes the information is there, just not in a ready to consume way. So let's try it again. I expect to run into now something completely different. Uh, well, that is completely different, but that's not
yeah.
what?
Wow.
Oh, it needs to be in double quotes.
What does the client ID?
The redirect URI needs to be in double quotes, and
Ah,
probably the client ID too. If it's complaining about the client ID, my guess is so YAML is weird in interpreting some of this stuff. So it's better to put it in quotes if we're not sure.
what about scope?
Those should be fine. Should not must, but they should.
Okay, rerun it.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. All right.
Oh, it made it through.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's now saying that all the endpoints are secured, and it's up and running. So let's go ahead and try to yeah, ship it.
Try and what?
Yeah, well, let's just ship it. Just
Yeah.
deploy. Hit deploy. Let's just go to localhost the root and see what happens. Okay, great. This is progress because we have successfully gone to Kinda, and Kinda is saying, "Hey, this looks suspicious. You're giving us a callback URL that you haven't registered with us." So now we need to go into Kinda and configure the callback URL. And you might want to copy and paste what it says there you provided because we'll need that. Yes, we need to tell Kinda, no, no, this is us.
So let's see. Authentication.
Don't ask me where it is. I
Okay.
guess it's under details. So so it's under callback URLs. Yep. So just replace that one
Ah,
because that's the one that they use in their SDK thingy, but we're not using their SDK.
I see. So we don't need to use
Nope.
that naming.
Nope. And what we'll do is we'll eventually add the same one. Sorry, we'll add the same path, but to the domain where you're deploying to.
Right.
So nice enough here, unlike some OAuth providers, you can actually enter multiple callback URLs. GitHub, they only allow one callback URL to be to say this is the URL, which means you have to set up multiple different applications, which is really annoying.
Should we do a new line now and get the production one in, or?
Sure, if you want. Yes, last time I configured it, it only allows one. So I basically created two apps, one called the local host version of Ensembler and the other one called the production version of Ensembler. They are two separate things because they only allowed one callback URL. They might have changed it recently, but as of, I don't know, 3 to 6 months ago, nope. The base URL is replaced at runtime. So it's when runtime, whether it happens at the request, it might be done as a URI template variable, is what I would guess. So that it's probably as it makes the request, it's replaced.
So would production be HTTPS?
Yes. And you can basically just, if you want to put that in the logout redirect, you can put that as a new line there. You won't want the whole thing. You just want the domain.
I know. I was just
okay.
Mindlessly.
Alrighty, let's save it.
Okay.
And let's, you should be able to just go back to the browser. We don't need to rerun the app.
Oh.
And just back up and go try it again. You want to go localhost because we haven't deployed it yet.
Wow.
Look at that. All right. So we're making progress. Now we need to go into Kinda and actually, I mean, we could go and create an account. I have no idea what it's going to do. We could do that. Or we could create a pre-existing user. What do you want to do?
I would like to see how to do pre-existing user. Obviously,
right.
We would know how this would work.
Yeah.
So
I have no idea where that would be. We can go home and see if we can do it there. Users would be my guess, although I don't know what users that would be. Yeah, I guess we add user.
Okay.
And I have to have a first and a last name.
I guess I can still do this on screen. Default organization. Sure.
Yeah. I think that's it. I don't know what it's going to use for the password though. Maybe they'll have to go through a password reset.
Right.
But let's punch it in and see what happens. So it's using an authentication code. All right.
Now the email came from Song Themes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a no reply though. Interesting.
Right.
Okay, I guess I'll do this off screen. Not that it matters. It's probably one of those.
Yeah, it's a one-time use code. So
yeah. Now I got to create a password.
I sure hope it's a one-time use code.
Yeah. Um,
Wow, I'm surprised that I'm just looking at the Spring Security docs. I'm surprised that they haven't updated this for Spring Boot 3. That's a bummer. Not that that stuff changed, but
ooh. So after I put in, it said basically create
uh-huh.
new password.
Oh, okay. This is actually a bug in their docs. So, here, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
So here,
Oh, I can't see. 1 second. I gotta pull it over and make it big.
um,
Okay, now I can see.
so here it has the example base URL in quotes authorized Okta. But here in the documentation, it says OAuth2 authorization registration ID. So here it's authorization. This shouldn't say authorized. This should say authorization.
Oh,
So their sampling is wrong. It should basically be this.
okay.
All right, I'll switch back to you.
Then let me
Yep.
grab that. Actually, I can just type it authorization. So this is
So let's actually
authorization.
wait before you do that. Go back to the browser
Mm-hmm.
because you can
Give me
see
a second.
you can see the URL.
Where'd it go? There it is.
So you can see the URL, right? It's basically calling back to uh, yeah. So the redirect is wrong.
So authorization here, like that.
And Suiji points out also that we need the /OAuth too. So that that redirect URI is just completely wrong. I now want to check my configuration. Hold on.
Oh, are you using Kinda for your other project?
No, I'm using wow, so the GitHub redirect URI is quite different. Uh did that change? Because in my configuration, my redirect URI is base URL /login/OAuth2/code registration ID.
Hmm.
Uh, well, let's at least see if the documentation is correct.
Where did you want me to go? To this documentation?
No, no, no. Sorry, no. Go to the application properties where you were. So stick in front of authorization. Stick /OAuth2. I feel like that's wrong, but let's try that.
Restart.
What we can also do uh, is we can actually try to hit that endpoint. But let's just run it and see. Actually, you know
Okay.
what? Let's actually try to hit that endpoint. So let's so copy and paste the /OAuth2 to the end without the double quote. Yep. And then go to the browser. And let's go to localhost 8080. And then slash, and then add that. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that's good. Um, we'll have to re-whitelist the correct thing.
So back here to
It wasn't here. This is the users. We need to go back home. And then
org.
I think it's under your applications view details there on the right.
Oh, wait on here.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's replace that. Yeah.
Okay. Now.
So now, yeah, let's just go to localhost 8080 and let's try to authorize.
Huh.
What just can you just delete the whole thing and do localhost 8080?
Yeah, without it. Okay. Sure. That's what I'm going to do. Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what I did do it, and this is what it gave.
Um, yeah, go back to localhost 8080. Yeah, it's stuck in a redirect loop because the URI is still not correct. So what's happening is it goes to Kinda, then it comes back, but the place it comes back to isn't on a known thing, and basically then it tries to make it to authenticate on it, and so it goes back and forth. I don't know if you can make the right side bigger by zooming. I don't know if you can zoom in on the right side.
Let's find out.
I guess not.
It's
That's a
not doing
bummer.
it here. See if this gear gives. No, that's for performance appearance. Not seeing anything for. Are you for increasing the size?
So let's do this. I want to try one more thing, and then we can we can then troubleshoot using the network console. So
Okay.
let's you can close the right side there in the browser. And maybe one of our viewers can look up, how do I make the network console text bigger? So let's go back to the application properties. Let's change it. So I don't understand. I don't understand what the other docs are talking about, because for login, this redirect URI is wrong. So stick the word login / in front of OAuth 2. Other way around. Want a / before login.
Yeah, I know.
And instead of authorization, use the word code. And actually, the registration ID is also a template variable, even though it should be Kinda. We can actually use curly brace registration ID instead
You
instead of
mean
Kinda.
here?
Yeah. So replace Kinda with registration ID
Ah,
and uppercase I for ID. Yep. So what it'll do is at runtime, it will replace it with the appropriate registration ID, which should be Kinda. It's the unique identifier, which we've defined. So let's try this. So let's restart the app and try it. Before you go, oh, we'll have to change also the callback because we just changed that. So let's change that here.
right.
You won't be able to use registration ID on their end.
No, I know.
Okay.
This way we'll remember to change it. And then what would go where reg ID is?
So that would be Kinda.
This is why we shouldn't have done both URLs. Yagni.
You could delete the other one and then we can always add it later.
Yeah, true.
That way you're not constantly updating both.
Yep. That was definitely a fail. Interesting. The save is spinning. Let me do it again. Do I need to restart the app?
We just restarted it, so it should be fine.
Right.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a long time to save. All right, so let's open up, new tab. Before you hit enter, let's open up the network console, even though we can't increase its.
Okay. Give it a roll. Are you researching how to increase it?
I'm searching on how to increase it. Well, it says it should work, but it doesn't, unless maybe you have to have the focus there. If you click in the filter on the right side.
Right side?
Well, where you just clicked. Yeah, that's the right side. That's the right side.
Oh, I see.
And now hit
Control plus.
zoom in. Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. So it had to have the focus. Okay.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay, let me clear it.
Yeah.
Where's the clear button go? There it is.
All right, and let's do it.
And go.
Hey.
It worked.
It worked. Oh my God.
That's
because
cool.
it had already cached the login. So when it went to do the OAuth, actually let's inspect the network stuff. So make that bigger. Right. So we hit localhost. It did a redirect. It redirected us to. Actually, we want to make the initiator column bigger because that's the important stuff. You can make the type column really tiny because we don't care about that column. And then you can make the initiator bigger. And so basically we hit the local host. It said, oh, you need to be authenticated. So Spring redirected us to Kinda with a code. And then then it did, and it said, "Oh, I already know who you are, so I'm going to send you back to log in with the code to confirm that this is the code you gave me, and you're logged in and authenticated, and all is good."
Sweet.
And then it looks like it did a request again because we've basically said every request needs to be authenticated. So when it tried to grab the favicon,
Right.
which you don't have defined, it had to go through the authentication process again.
Right. And
And
we
so
were
that's
going to
why,
narrow the
yeah.
scope
So
of what
yeah. So
authentication could be
now,
with it.
like, oh my God, it only
Yeah.
took us 2 hours to do this. But now, one of us gets to write a blog article on how to configure Kinda with Spring Boot client automatic registration and save somebody 2 hours.
Yeah. Jesus.
This should not have been this painful, but every time I do this, it always seems to be this
It's
painful.
painful.
Whereas if they had and this is totally on Kinda, they simply did not document this in a way that would have been useful to the majority of backend Java developers using Spring Boot. Like, market share of Spring Boot is what, 60, 70%? And so you've basically said we could care less about the Java market. And that's too bad for them. So it's 12:30, which was our planned end
Right.
time. But we're now in good shape for setting up the different. So now we've got authentication, and so now we have to decide how do we want to do the authorization. So the simplest way is basically say, this page, anybody can access it. They don't need to be authenticated. To access this page, they need to be authenticated. And right now, you're the only one who can be authenticated. So therefore,
Right.
that would be sufficient. That would be sort of like the minimal amount of security we would need
Right.
in order to deploy.
So we would punt on roles until we had a second person. That
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
that makes
well,
sense.
yeah, that would have basically punt until we have somebody who has a different role. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, I don't know if you want to, I mean, may as well commit this.
Yeah.
So next time, and I don't think we've firmed up a schedule for that yet, but next time we will go ahead and do that. We'll basically use Spring's security configuration to and it's what's called request matchers to basically say, for this path of information, anybody can access it, which would pretty much just be for the home page and anything off the home page. And then anything under admin, we could say, no, this requires you to be authenticated. And so we'll do that next time.
Cool.
All right. Wow.
That was a chunk of time.
Yeah. All right, folks.
But hey, it's nice to get
yeah.
to the point where we got it working when we
Yes.
end versus
Yeah.
no one likes to end on frustration.
Yeah. Yeah. So unlike last time, this time we are successfully authenticating. Everything's configured the way we need it to, and we can finally then move forward on creating the UI for actually importing, bulk importing our songs. So that'll be the first things we do next time. So that's all, folks. So thanks for hanging out, and thanks for the help along the way. Definitely appreciate it. And as always, if you want to be informed of future streams more than just, hey, we're going live messages, you'll want to join the Discord, and make sure you go into the roles channel and tap on the little alert icon under Code Stream Alert. And watch out for announcements there. I do also post on Mastodon and Twitter, but those are secondary sources. Discord is always the one that's going to have the most notice and the most up-to-date information. So join there. Anything else to say, Mike, before we
No,
end our
looking forward to the
stream?
next step.
Yep.
Once I figure out when that is.
Yes. All right, folks. Thanks for joining, and we will see you next time.